The black dress swished against wet concrete as Karen knelt beside the filled-in hole where my pool used to be. 50 neighbors watched in stunned silence as she placed a wreath on the fresh dirt and began to sob. "We gather today to mourn the senseless murder of our beloved community pool," she wailed into her megaphone. I stood frozen at my kitchen window, coffee mug trembling in my hands, as the crowd turned toward my house with eyes full of hatred. What I didn't know was that Karen had been planning this moment for months, and the funeral was just the beginning of her revenge. Part 1. The last splash. The demolition crew arrived at dawn, their equipment casting long shadows across the Willowbrook subdivision like mechanical vultures. Sarah Chen pressed her face against the cool glass of her kitchen window, watching the yellow excavator lumber through her backyard gate. After 15 years of pool parties, summer barbecues, and her daughter's swimming lessons, today marked the end of an era. "Mom, they're really doing it." 16-year-old Emma appeared beside her, still in pajamas, her voice thick with sleep and disbelief. Sarah nodded, unable to speak. The decision hadn't been easy. After James left, taking half their savings, and most of her faith in forever, maintaining the pool had become impossible. The monthly chemicals, the constant repairs, the liability insurance she could barely afford on her teacher's salary. It had to go. "Mrs. Chen." The crew foreman knocked on her sliding door. "We are ready to start. You sure about this?" Sarah slid the door open, letting in the crisp October air. "I'm sure, Tony. Just give me one more minute." She walked to the pool's edge, remembering Emma's first successful dive, James teaching their daughter to do a flip turn, countless evenings floating on rafts while neighbors' laughter drifted over the fence. The water sparkled in the morning. Sun, oblivious to its fate. "Sarah Chen." The voice cut through the morning quiet like a siren. Sarah's stomach dropped as she turned to see Karen Mitchell storming across the yard, her platinum blonde hair perfectly styled despite the early hour. Designer athleisure outfit coordinated down to her matching water bottle. "Karen, please don't start. Don't start." Karen's voice pitched higher, causing Mr. Peterson next door to peer over his fence. "Don't start? You're destroying community property." "It's my pool, Karen. On my property. That I pay taxes on. That pool has been the heart of this neighborhood for 15 years. Karen gestured dramatically, her manicured nails catching. "The light. Every summer, our children learn to swim in that pool. We've had block parties, birthday celebrations, and I've paid for every gallon of water, every repair, every insurance claim when your son broke the diving board," Sarah interrupted, surprising herself with her firmness. "I can't afford it. Anymore." Emma stepped protectively beside her mother. "Mom's been letting everyone use it for free forever. Maybe if people had offered to help with costs. Don't you dare lecture me, young lady." Karen whirled on Emma. "I am the president of the Willowbrook Homeowners Association, and I will not stand by while your mother single-handedly destroys our property values." "The HOA doesn't own my backyard," Sarah said quietly. Tony cleared his throat. "Ladies, I've got a schedule to keep. Mrs. Chen, you want us to proceed?" Sarah looked at Karen's flushed face, then at the small crowd of neighbors that had begun to gather on the sidewalk, drawn by the commotion. Mrs. Rodriguez clutched her morning coffee. The Johnsons stood with their arms crossed. Even old Mr. Kowalski had emerged from his house for the first time in months. "Proceed," Sarah said. Karen's eyes widened. "This is not over, Sarah. Not by a long shot." The excavator roared to life, drowning out whatever else Karen might have said. Sarah watched her neighbor stalk back to her pristine colonial cell phone, already pressed to her ear. Emma squeezed her mother's hand. "She's scary when she's angry," Emma whispered. "She's always scary," Sarah replied, but she kept her voice light for her daughter's sake. The pool's death was surprisingly quick. Within an hour, Tony's crew had drained the last of the water and begun breaking up the concrete. Each crash of the jackhammer felt like a small earthquake, reverberating through Sarah's chest. Neighbors lingered on the sidewalk, some shaking their heads sadly, others whispering among themselves. By noon, where the pool had existed for 15 years, only a gaping hole remained. "We'll have the dirt delivered tomorrow," Tony explained, wiping sweat from his forehead. 2 days to fill and grade, then you can seed it in the spring." Sarah nodded, writing him a check that would leave her account dangerously low. But it was done. The pool was gone, and with it, a monthly expense that had been slowly drowning her. "Mom, look." Emma pointed toward Karen's house. Karen stood on her front porch, no longer alone. She was surrounded by at least a dozen neighbors, their voices carrying across the yards in urgent whispers. When Karen noticed Sarah watching, she smiled, a cold, calculated expression that made Sarah's skin crawl. "What's she planning?" Emma asked. "Nothing good," Sarah murmured. That evening, Sarah sat on her back deck, staring at the ugly scar where her pool used to be. The October air carried the scent of burning leaves and distant barbecues. For the first time in months, she felt something like peace. The constant worry about pool maintenance was gone. She could breathe again. Her phone buzzed, a text from her neighbor Amy Rodriguez. "Karen's been calling everyone. She's really upset about the pool. Just thought you should know." Another text, this one from Dave Johnson. "Karen says you violated some HOA covenant about community amenities. Is that true?" Sarah's peace evaporated. She pulled up the HOA bylaws on her phone, scrolling through page after page of regulations about fence heights and acceptable mailbox colors. Nothing about pools. Nothing about community amenities. Her phone rang. The caller ID showed the number for Willowbrook Elementary, where she taught 3rd grade. "Sarah, it's Principal Martinez. I've had several calls today from parents in your neighborhood. There seems to be some controversy about a pool." Sarah's heart sank. "It was my pool, on my property. I had it removed because I couldn't afford the upkeep." "I understand, but the parents are concerned about your judgment, your stability." The Mitchells were particularly vocal. "They're questioning whether you should be teaching their children if you can't maintain your own property." "My personal finances have nothing to do with my teaching ability." "Of course not. But perception matters, Sarah. Maybe take tomorrow off. Let things settle down. We'll talk Monday." The call ended, leaving Sarah staring at her phone in disbelief. Karen had gone after her job. Over a pool. Emma appeared in the doorway, holding 2 cups of hot chocolate. The Hendersons are having some kind of meeting at Karen's house. Like 20 cars in the street. Sarah accepted the cocoa gratefully. "It'll blow over, honey. People will find something else to gossip about." But even as she said it, Sarah felt a chill that had nothing to do with the October evening. Through the gaps in the fence, she could see lights blazing in Karen's backyard, hear the murmur of multiple conversations, the clink of glasses. It sounded like a war council. At 11 p.m., long after the last car had pulled away from Karen's house, Sarah was still awake, alternating between grading papers and staring out at the dirt-filled crater in her backyard. A soft knock on her sliding door made her jump. Amy Rodriguez stood on the deck, her face pale in the porch light. "Amy, what's wrong?" "I need to tell you something about tomorrow," Amy whispered, glancing nervously toward Karen's house. "But I can't stay long. If Karen sees me here." Sarah slid the door open. "What about tomorrow?" "She's planning something for the pool. Some kind of ceremony. She's been calling it a funeral, Sarah. A funeral for your pool. She's invited the whole neighborhood." "A funeral?" Sarah laughed, but it came out hollow. "That's ridiculous." "She's ordered flowers. Black flowers. And she bought a headstone online, had it rush delivered. She's completely lost it, Sarah. But people are buying into it. They're actually coming." The laughter died in Sarah's throat. "You're serious?" "Dead serious. She's got 50 people confirmed. She's calling it a memorial service for our stolen community heart. She even registered it with the city as a peaceful demonstration." Sarah felt the walls of her kitchen closing in around her. "When?" "Tomorrow at 2. Right there, in your backyard. She claims she has a right to access it because it's been used as a community space for so long." "She can't do that. It's my property." Amy's expression was grim. Karen Mitchell thinks she can do anything. And the scary part? Half the neighborhood believes her. After Amy left, Sarah stood at her kitchen sink, hands shaking as she washed the same mug 3 times. Outside, Karen's house glowed like a command center, silhouetting her neighbor's figure as she moved back and forth past the windows, still making calls, still planning. Sarah had thought removing the pool would solve her problems. Instead, she had apparently declared war on the most powerful person in Willowbrook, a woman who had just turned a simple home improvement project into a neighborhood-wide conspiracy. And tomorrow, Karen Mitchell was going to hold a funeral in her backyard for a pool that had been, until yesterday, very much alive. Sarah woke at dawn to the sound of vehicles rumbling past her house. She stumbled to the front window, still in her nightgown, and felt her blood turn to ice. A white panel van was parked across the street, its side emblazoned with Henderson's funeral services in gold script. Two men in black suits were unloading folding chairs. "This can't be happening," she whispered. Emma appeared beside her, already dressed. "Mom, there are news vans on Maple Street. Channel 7 and Channel 12. Mrs. Patterson says they're here about the Poole funeral." News vans. Sarah's legs gave out, and she sank onto the couch. What had started as a neighborhood squabble was becoming a media circus. She grabbed her phone and dialed the police. "Willowbrook Police, Officer Barnes speaking. This is Sarah. Chen on Elmwood Drive. My neighbor is planning to hold some kind of demonstration on my private property today without permission. Can you? Are you referring to the memorial service registered with the city? Mrs. Mitchell filed all the proper permits for a peaceful assembly on public easement." Public easement. The area between the sidewalk and your property line. Technically city property. As long as they stay off your actual yard, they're within their rights. Sarah stared out her window. The thin strip of grass between the sidewalk and her fence was barely 6 feet wide. What if they trespass? Then you call us and we'll respond. But I'd recommend staying inside today. Things gotten bigger than anyone expected. The line went dead. Sarah sat in stunned silence until Emma's voice cut through her shock. "Mom, you need to see this." Emma held up her laptop, showing a Facebook page titled "Justice for the Willowbrook Community Pool." It had over 3,000 members. The top post, shared 800 times, featured a photo of Sarah's backyard taken from someone's drone, showing the dirt-filled crater where the pool had been. "Selfish teacher destroys beloved community gathering place," read the caption. 15 years of memories, gone because one woman put money over community. Join us today at 2 p.m. for a memorial service honoring what we've lost. The comments were brutal. Teachers are supposed to care about community. My kids learned to swim in that pool. This is heartbreaking. She could have asked for help with costs instead of just destroying it. Typical. No consideration for anyone but herself. Sarah's hand shook as she scrolled. Someone had posted her work address, her principal's phone number, even Emma's. "School. We should leave town," Emma said quietly. "Go to Grandma's for the weekend." Sarah looked at her daughter, 16 years old and already talking about running away. "No. This is our home. We are not letting Karen Mitchell chase us out." At 10 a.m., Sarah peered through her blinds and gasped. The street looked like a festival setup. White tents dotted the grass easement. A catering truck had arrived, along with a portable stage and sound system. News crews interviewed neighbors, their cameras pointed toward her house like accusations. Her phone buzzed constantly, unknown numbers, reporters wanting comments, former students' parents demanding explanations. She'd stopped answering hours ago. "Sarah Chen." A knock echoed through the house. "Channel 7 News. We'd like to get your side of the story." More knocks. More reporters. Sarah and Emma huddled in the kitchen, curtains drawn, feeling like prisoners. In their own home. At noon, the crowd began to arrive in earnest. Sarah watched through a crack in the blinds as neighbors she'd known for years walked past her house without looking up, carrying flowers and homemade signs, RIP Community Pool and in memory of neighborhood unity. Mrs. Patterson, whose grandson had taken his first swimming lessons in Sarah's pool, dabbed her eyes with a tissue. The Hendersons carried a photo of last summer's block party, children splashing in the pool while adults laughed on the deck. Sarah felt a stab of guilt so sharp it took her breath away. These people weren't just Karen's minions. They were genuinely mourning something they'd lost. "Maybe I should have found another way," she whispered. Emma gripped her hand. "Mom, you couldn't afford it. You did nothing wrong." At 1:45 p.m., a hush fell over the crowd. Sarah crept to the front window and saw Karen Mitchell approaching like a black-clad general leading her troops. She wore a vintage funeral dress, complete with a black veil, and carried an enormous wreath of black roses. Behind her walked a procession of neighbors, many in dark clothing, their faces solemn. The ceremony began precisely at 2 o'clock. Friends, neighbors, fellow mourners, Karen's voice carried clearly through the speakers. We gather today not in anger, but in grief, to honor the memory of something precious that was taken from us too soon. Sarah watched in horrified fascination, as Karen delivered a eulogy that would have been moving if it weren't completely insane. For 15 years, this pool brought us together. Children learned to swim here. Teenagers fell in love here. Adults found friendship over summer barbecues. It was more than chlorinated water and concrete. It was the beating heart of our community. The crowd murmured agreement. Several people were actually crying. But hearts can be broken, Karen continued, her voice rising. And ours was shattered by one woman's selfish decision to put money over memories, profit over people, personal convenience over community connection. Now the murmurs turned angry. Sarah saw heads turning toward her house, faces twisted with resentment. We cannot bring back what we've lost, Karen declared. But we can ensure that Willowbrook remembers. That this tragedy serves as a lesson about what happens when individual greed triumphs over collective good. Karen placed her wreath on the dirt where the pool had been, a gesture that required her to step several feet onto Sarah's property. The crowd applauded as she returned to the microphone. I call upon Sarah Chen to join us, to explain to these children why their swimming hole had to die, to tell these parents why summer memories matter less than her bank balance. The crowd took up the chant, Sarah, Sarah, Sarah. Emma gripped her mother's arm. Don't go out there. But Sarah was already moving toward the door. She couldn't hide in her house while 50 people turned her into a monster on her own lawn. She stepped onto her front porch, and the crowd fell silent. Cameras swiveled toward her. In the sudden quiet, she could hear her heart pounding. I know you're all upset, Sarah began, her voice barely carrying without amplification. But, speak up, someone shouted. Face what you've done. Karen offered her the microphone with a smile that was pure venom. Please, Sarah, share with us why you felt entitled to destroy 15 years of community tradition. Sarah took the microphone with trembling hands. 50 faces stared at her expectantly. She thought of her mounting bills, her ex-husband's abandonment, the sleepless nights worrying about money. I couldn't afford it anymore, she said simply. After my divorce, I can barely pay my mortgage. The pool was costing me $400 a month in chemicals, insurance, and repairs. I had to choose between keeping the pool and keeping my house. You could have asked for help, called out Mrs. Henderson. We would have contributed. Where were the contributions for the past 15 years? Sarah shot back, surprising herself with her anger. Where were you when the heater broke? When kids vandalized the equipment? When the city made me install a new safety fence? The crowd shifted uncomfortably. Karen stepped forward, sensing the momentum changing. So you admit it, Karen said triumphantly. You put your personal financial situation above the needs of an entire community. You destroyed something beloved rather than what? Sarah's voice cracked with emotion. Rather than go bankrupt? Rather than lose my house? You live in a $500,000 colonial, Karen. Your husband makes more in a month than I make in a year. Don't lecture me about community when you've never offered to help with a single expense. For a moment, the crowd was silent. Then someone in the back yelled, She's got a point. Karen's face flushed red. This isn't about money. It's all about money. Sarah shouted into the microphone. You want community? Pay for it. You want a pool? Build your own. You want to stand on my property and call me selfish? Get off my lawn. The crowd erupted. In chaos. Some people applauded Sarah's honesty. Others booed her anger. News cameras captured every moment as neighbors turned on each other. 15 years of suppressed resentments exploding into the open. Karen grabbed the microphone back. You see, she shrieked. You see the kind of person we are dealing with? The selfishness? The complete lack of community spirit? The complete lack of financial support, you mean? Sarah retorted. As the argument escalated, neither woman noticed the black sedan that had pulled up behind the news vans. 2 men in suits stepped out, one carrying a briefcase, the other holding an official-looking document. They approached the chaos with the calm authority of people accustomed to delivering bad news. "Excuse me," the taller man called out. "I'm looking for Sarah Chen." Sarah turned, still breathing hard from her confrontation with Karen. "That's me." "I'm Deputy Sheriff Reynolds. I have a legal document to serve." He handed her the papers with practiced efficiency. Sarah's hand shook as she read the header: Willowbrook Homeowners Association versus Sarah Chen, Injunction for Community Property Restoration. The crowd had gone completely silent, sensing something significant was happening. "What is this?" Sarah whispered. You're being sued by your homeowners association." The law office of Patterson, Hendricks & Associates occupied the top floor of Willowbrook's only high-rise, its glass walls offering a panoramic view of the subdivision that was slowly destroying Sarah's life. She sat across from attorney Michael Patterson, no relation to her neighbor, clutching a cup of coffee that had gone cold an hour ago. "I've reviewed the HOA covenants," Patterson said, sliding a thick folder across his desk. "Karen Mitchell's lawsuit is built on a legal technicality that's creative. I'll give her that." Sarah's stomach clenched. After 3 sleepless nights, she'd finally found a lawyer willing to take her case on payment plan. The consultation fee alone would eat up her grocery budget for a month. Creative how? Patterson opened the folder, revealing highlighted passages in dense legal text. The original HOA agreement from 2009 includes something called a Community Amenity Preservation Clause. It was buried on page 47 and likely added without most homeowners realizing. What does it mean? Essentially, if a property owner maintains a recreational facility that becomes integral to neighborhood life for more than 10 years, the HOA can petition to have it classified as community property. Once classified, removing it requires board approval. Sarah felt the air leave her lungs. "But I never agreed to that. I didn't even know it existed." "You signed the HOA agreement when you bought the house. Unfortunately, not reading every clause doesn't invalidate your signature." Patterson's expression was sympathetic but grim. "Karen Mitchell has been the HOA president for 8 years. She knows these bylaws better than most lawyers. So the lawsuit will succeed. The temporary restraining order is already in effect. If we can't get it overturned, you'll be legally required to rebuild the pool within 30 days or face escalating fines that start at $500 daily." Sarah did the math quickly. Even if she could somehow scrape together $50,000 to rebuild the pool, she'd then be back to the original problem, $400 monthly in maintenance. She couldn't afford. There has to be another way. Patterson leaned back in his chair. "There might be. Karen's lawsuit hinges on the pool being integral to community life. If we can prove the community's connection to your pool was less significant than she claims, or that you received inadequate compensation for maintaining what amounts to a public facility." How do we prove that? Documentation. Receipts for every repair, every chemical purchase, every insurance claim. Evidence that you bore the financial burden alone while others benefited. Photos showing property damage from overuse. Anything that demonstrates the unfair burden placed on you. Sarah nodded, already mentally cataloguing 15 years of pool-related expenses. What are our chances? Patterson's hesitation told her everything. Karen Mitchell has hired Blackstone and Associates. They specialize in HOA law and don't take cases they can't win. She's also cultivated significant community support, which influences judges more than we'd like to admit. So I'm going to lose. Not necessarily. But Sarah, I need you to understand something. Even if we win, Karen isn't going to stop. She's made this personal. People like her don't accept defeat gracefully. As if summoned by his words, Sarah's phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Enjoying your last few days of freedom?" Tick-tock. A concerned neighbor she showed Patterson, who frowned deeply. "Has this been happening often?" "Since the funeral." Anonymous texts, phone calls, people driving by my house slowly. "My daughter's scared to walk to school." Document everything. If this escalates to harassment, we can file a restraining order. Sarah left the law office feeling more hopeless than when she'd arrived. The autumn air bit through her jacket as she walked to her car, her mind spinning with legal fees she couldn't afford and outcomes she couldn't accept. Her phone rang, Emma's school. Mrs. Chen. This is Vice Principal Morrison. I need you to. Come pick up Emma immediately. Sarah's blood chilled. What happened? Is she hurt? There was an incident during lunch. Several students confronted her about the pool situation. Things got heated. Sarah was already running toward her car. Heated how? Emma threw her lunch tray at Madison Henderson. There was a significant mess, and other students were upset. We need to discuss this in person. The drive to Emma's school passed in a blur of worst-case scenarios. Sarah found her daughter sitting outside the principal's office, her school uniform splattered with what looked like spaghetti sauce, her eyes red with tears. Mom, I'm sorry. They wouldn't stop. Sure, it's okay. Sarah hugged Emma tightly, not caring about the stains. Tell me what happened. Vice Principal Morrison appeared, a stern woman in her 50s who'd known Emma since kindergarten. Mrs. Chen, please come in. In the privacy of Morrison's office, the story emerged. A group of students, led by Madison Henderson, whose parents had been vocal at the pool funeral, had cornered Emma in the cafeteria, demanding she explain why her mother had destroyed their summer fun. When Emma tried to leave, they'd followed her, chanting "pool killer" loud enough to draw attention from the entire lunchroom. Emma finally snapped when Madison said your family should move away because you don't care about community. Morrison explained. That's when the lunch tray went flying. Sarah looked at her daughter's tear-stained face and felt a rage so pure it frightened her. These were children parroting their parents' hatred, turning a property dispute into playground warfare. What's Emma's punishment? Normally, this would mean suspension. But given the circumstances, and the fact that Emma has never had a disciplinary issue before, I'm recommending she finish the week at home. A cooling-off period for everyone involved. Emma's voice was small. Am I in trouble, Mom? No, sweetheart. You defended yourself. That's never wrong. But as they drove home, Sarah wondered how much more defending they have to do. The answer came that evening. Sarah was in her kitchen, reviewing 15 years of pool receipts for Patterson, when Emma burst through the front door in a panic. Mom, come see. Sarah followed her daughter outside and stopped dead. Her front yard looked like a crime scene. Someone had scattered dozens of dead goldfish across a lawn, their orange bodies glinting in the porch light. A hand-painted sign stuck in the middle of the carnage read, "Pool Murderer." Oh my God, Sarah whispered. Emma was already on her phone. I'm calling the police. Wait. Sarah grabbed her daughter's arm. Look around. Do you see any neighbors? Anyone watching? The street was suspiciously empty. No curious faces in windows, no one walking their dog, no evening joggers. In a neighborhood where people usually gathered on porches to chat, the sudden absence of witnesses felt orchestrated. They're all inside, Emma realized. They know this happened. Sarah's phone buzzed. How does it feel to have something you love die suddenly? Just a taste of what's coming. A concerned neighbor, Mom, this is harassment. The police have to do something. Officer Barnes arrived 20 minutes later, the same cop who dismissed Sarah's concerns about the funeral. He surveyed the fish-covered lawn with barely concealed irritation. Any idea who might have done this? He asked, pulling out a notepad. I've been getting anonymous threats since the pool dispute started, Sarah explained, showing him the texts. The whole neighborhood blames me for. Mrs. Chen, I've got to ask. Is it possible Emma did this herself for attention? These family disputes can be stressful for kids. Sarah stared at him in disbelief. Are you suggesting my daughter scattered dead fish in our own yard? I'm exploring all possibilities. Maybe she thought it would generate sympathy, make the neighbors back off. That's ridiculous. Emma exploded. Why would I? Emma, inside. Now. Sarah's voice was deadly calm. When her daughter was gone, she turned back to Barnes. You think. This is a family issue, not a crime. I think this is a neighborhood dispute that's gotten out of hand. My advice? Apologize to Mrs. Mitchell, rebuild the pool, and move on with your life. Apologize? For what? For stirring up trouble where there didn't need to be any. Barnes closed his notepad. These are good people, Mrs. Chen. They're not criminals. They're just upset about losing something they valued. After he left, Sarah stood alone in her fish-covered yard, the smell of death thick in the cool air. The message was clear: rebuild the pool or face escalating consequences. But it was the officer's words that haunted her most. These are good people. As if her financial struggles and difficult choices had somehow transformed her into the villain. She was still cleaning up dead fish at midnight when her phone rang. Sarah. It's Amy Rodriguez. I can't sleep. Sarah paused, a garbage bag of goldfish in her hands. What's wrong? I need to tell you something about Karen. Something I should have said days ago. Amy's voice was barely a whisper. She's been planning this for months, Sarah. The lawsuit, the funeral, everything. She started researching HOA law the day after. Your divorce was finalized. How do you know that? Because she asked me to help. She wanted me to search through old social media posts, find photos of neighborhood kids using your pool, build evidence of community attachment. When I refused, she made threats. Sarah's grip tightened on the phone. What kind of threats? My Miguel was arrested for shoplifting last year. Just candy from the corner store. Stupid kid mistake. Karen said she'd make sure everyone knew about it if I didn't. Sarah woke to the sound of power tools and heavy machinery. Dawn was breaking grey and cold as she stumbled to her front window, still in yesterday's clothes, and saw something that made her question her sanity. A construction crew was assembling. In her front yard. What the hell? She threw on a robe and rushed outside, Emma close behind her. A dozen workers in hard hats were unloading equipment from 3 trucks, concrete mixers, excavation tools, pool installation gear. Their supervisor, a weathered man in his 50s, approached with a clipboard and an apologetic expression. I'm sorry about the early start. We are here for the emergency pool installation. Emergency what? Sarah's voice cracked with disbelief. Ordered by. He consulted his paperwork. Karen Mitchell, acting as authorized HOA representative. Court Order 2024 WB 3847 requires immediate commencement of pool restoration. Sarah stared at the legal document he thrust into her hands. The Willowbrook County Court seal looked official enough, but something felt wrong. I never signed a work order. I can't afford this. The HOA has assumed financial responsibility under emergency community restoration provisions. We are pre-authorized to begin work immediately. Mom, Emma whispered urgently. Look at the street. Sarah turned and felt her knees go weak. The entire neighborhood had turned out to watch. Men and women lined the sidewalks like spectators. At a parade, many holding coffee cups and wearing satisfied smiles. Children pressed against fence posts, pointing excitedly at the construction equipment. Karen Mitchell stood in the center of it all, resplendent in a cream-colored coat, accepting. Congratulations from neighbors like a victorious politician. This can't be legal, Sarah said, but her voice sounded hollow even to herself. The supervisor shrugged. Lady, I just installed pools. You got a problem with the paperwork, take it up with the courts. The next 4 hours passed like a fever dream. Sarah watched helplessly as workers began excavating her backyard, their machinery tearing through the freshly filled dirt where her pool had been just days before. Each shovelful felt like a violation, a theft of her autonomy that she was powerless to stop. She called Patterson's office repeatedly, getting only voicemail. The courthouse claimed to have no record of the emergency order. The police referred her back to the HOA, and the HOA office was mysteriously closed for maintenance. By noon, the basic pool shell was taking shape. The workers moved with practiced efficiency, clearly rushing to complete as much as possible before anyone could intervene. Sarah. She turned to find Michael Patterson jogging across a yard, his usually perfect suit disheveled, his briefcase clutched against his chest like armor. Thank God, Sarah breathed. Tell me you can stop this. Patterson surveyed the construction. Chaos, his face grim. I've been trying to reach you all morning. Sarah, we have a problem. Several problems, actually. He pulled out his phone, showing her a local news article dated that morning. Willowbrook teacher defies court order, faces criminal contempt charges. Sarah read the first paragraph and felt the world tilt sideways. According to Channel 7's report, she had willfully ignored a court mandate to rebuild her pool and was now facing possible jail time for contempt of court. That's not true, she whispered. I never received any court order except the original injunction. I know. But someone, and I think we both know who, has been very busy spreading misinformation. The story's gone viral on social media. #PullDefiant is trending. Patterson scrolled through his phone, showing her tweet after tweet calling her selfish, entitled, "A criminal who thought she was above the law." Her teaching license was being questioned online. Parents were demanding her resignation. How is this happening? Sarah felt like Alice tumbling down the rabbit hole, when nothing made sense and everyone was mad. Karen Mitchell has orchestrated a masterpiece of character assassination, Patterson said grimly. She's created the appearance of legal authority, where none exists, manipulated public opinion to support her narrative, and positioned herself as the reasonable voice of community justice. But you can stop the construction, right? Get an injunction. Patterson watched the workers laying the pool's foundation and shook his head slowly. That's the brilliant part. Technically, they're not breaking any laws. The HOA does have the right to maintain community property under certain circumstances. By the time we prove this specific situation doesn't qualify, the pool will be finished. So she wins. She's 3 steps ahead of us at every turn. And Sarah. Patterson's expression darkened. There's something else. I've been digging into Karen Mitchell's background. This isn't her first time destroying someone. He opened his briefcase and pulled out a thick folder. Karen's lived in 4 different states over the past 20 years. In each location, she became HOA president. Within 2 years. In each location, she systematically targeted specific homeowners with legal harassment until they sold their houses and moved away. Sarah stared at property records, court documents, newspaper clippings chronicling a pattern of behavior spanning 2 decades. In Phoenix, she forced an elderly couple to tear down a garden shed by claiming it violated architectural guidelines. The legal fight cost them their retirement savings. In Denver, she sued a single mother over Christmas decorations, driving her into bankruptcy. In Austin, Why? Sarah interrupted. Why does she do this? Power. Control. Some people collect stamps. Karen Mitchell collects destroyed lives. Patterson closed the folder. But here's what's interesting. In every previous case, she eventually moved on to a new neighborhood, a fresh set of victims. Willowbrook is different. She's been here 8 years, longer than anywhere else. What does that mean? It means you might be her masterpiece, the culmination of everything she's learned about destroying people. As if summoned by their conversation, Karen appeared at the construction site's edge, wearing a hard hat and carrying a clipboard like she was overseeing her own project. Sarah, darling, she called out with poisonous sweetness. Isn't this exciting? Your pool will be even better than before. The community is so grateful for your cooperation. Sarah stormed over, Patterson following. This is insane, Karen. You can't just build a pool in my backyard without my permission. Oh, but I can. Emergency community restoration, authorized by the HOA board. Karen smiled that cold, perfect smile. Don't worry about the cost. We've set up a payment plan. Only $800 monthly for the next 15 years. $800. Sarah's voice came out as a squeak. I told you I can't afford $400. Well, then you should have thought of that before destroying community property. Karen examined her manicured nails. Of course, if you can't make the payments, the HOA will be forced to foreclose on your house to recover our investment. The words hit Sarah like a physical blow. $800 monthly on top of her mortgage, utilities, and Emma's expenses. It was impossible. Karen had engineered her complete financial ruin with surgical precision. You planned this, Sarah whispered. From the beginning. The funeral, the lawsuit, the construction, all of it. I planned to preserve community values, Karen replied primly. If that happened to teach you a lesson about selfishness, well, sometimes education is painful. Patterson stepped forward. Mrs. Mitchell, I should warn you that we are documenting everything for our federal harassment lawsuit. Karen laughed, a sound like breaking glass. Harassment? Mr. Patterson, everything I've done has been perfectly legal. Community restoration. Neighborhood preservation. Civic engagement. I'm a pillar of this community. You're a sociopath. Emma's voice cut through the adult conversation. Everyone turned to see the 16-year-old standing at the yard's edge, her school backpack slung over her shoulder, her face flushed with righteous anger. Emma, don't, Sarah started. No, Mom. Someone needs to say it. Emma walked closer, her young voice carrying clearly across the construction noise. You want to destroy our family because you're bored and mean and empty inside. You pick on people who can't fight back because it makes you feel powerful. Karen's smile faltered. For the first time. Young lady, you should learn some respect. Respect. Emma laughed bitterly. You want respect? Try earning it instead of terrorizing neighborhoods. Emma, that's enough, Sarah said, sensing danger in Karen's sudden stillness. But Emma was just getting started. You know what I think? I think. You're jealous. Mom worked 2 jobs to afford this house. She raised me alone after Dad left. She shared her pool with everyone for 15 years without asking for anything in return. And you? What have you ever done except make other people miserable? The construction workers had stopped to listen. Several neighbors edged closer, drawn by the confrontation. Karen's voice, when she finally spoke, was deadly quiet. You know, Emma, it's interesting that you mention your father leaving. I've been wondering about that divorce. About why a man would abandon his family so suddenly. Sarah felt ice in her veins. Karen, don't. Public records are fascinating reading, Karen continued, her eyes fixed on Emma's face. Did you know your mother was arrested for domestic assault 3 years ago? The charges were dropped, of course, but still. Makes you wonder what really happened that night. Emma's face went white. Several neighbors gasped. Patterson grabbed Sarah's arm as she lunged forward. That